Okay, it's time for the next upgrades on the Land Cruiser. So this time around, it's going to be the transfer case. I've been knowing for a while that it needs to change. It's been letting me know subtly by puddles of oil on the floor, popping out of low range, things like that, minor details. So I'm going to go ahead and start getting this thing torn apart, get the transfer case out of it, and then I will show you what we're going to do to upgrade. All right, so I didn't bother to film all the boring parts of pulling this all out, but this is my old transfer case, crawl box, adapters, all that. I built the crawl box and everything here a long time ago. It uses 241 planetary gear, so it's a 2.72 to 1 reduction, and then to the MP205 with its just under 2 to 1. So it's about a 5.4-ish low range overall. Works pretty good. Be nice to have a little bit lower in some instances, like crawling really deep snow. A lot of times if I'm pushing snow, I've got to give it just a little bit of throttle to keep things moving. I think with a little bit low range, it'll probably just crawl all on its own. So next step here is I got to take all of this apart. I'm going to clean up everything that I'm going to reuse and then start working on getting it put onto the new transfer case. Okay, so I got everything all torn apart. So I've got the transmission to crawl box adapter, planetary set, output shaft, shift collar, all my shift components, the main case, and my transfer case adapter. So in tearing this all apart, I ran into a little bit of a problem. As this pile here used to be the bearing that went up inside there that the end of the output shaft rode on, which you can focus. That's not ideal anymore. So I'm going to need to come up with new bearing for that. The end of the output shaft being torn up, not really a big deal because I have to make a new one of those anyway. So show you why I have to do that. So this is my new transfer case. This is the JB Conversions Lomax 205. It's about a 3 to 1 low range. Kind of looked at it, it's a little over 3 to 1, but they call it 3 to 1. So went ahead and had them throw some of the blingy parts on it too when we had it built. So it'll look nice for a little while until it eventually kind of looks like this one, which is what I just took out. So the reason I was saying earlier I'm going to have a new input shaft made, when I built this case, I kind of built it out of what I had laying around, which was a 31 spline Ford input shaft. Well, this is a 32 spline GM, so I'm going to have to make myself a new input shaft, which that's not a huge deal to do, but it's going to be a process. Also, I think there was a little miscommunication. I'm going to have to swap the 1410 yoke off of this in place of the flange on here, but that's not a big deal either. So yeah, it's going to be a heck of a lot nicer. It should be about a little over 50% lower in overall gearing. The other nice thing is being the 3 to 1, I think is going to be a really nice trail gear. So I'll be able to run around in that when I need to most of the time, and then when I need to be stupid low, I can just shift the crawl box in and I'll have all the stupid low I want, which most of the time trail I probably won't even hardly use that. Like I said, I think in the snow it'll be really nice to have something to be able to really crawl when the snow gets deep so I don't spin tires and get myself buried. That's the theory anyway. We'll see how it works out. So for the new output shaft for my crawl box, this is what I'm starting with. This is a 241 main shaft. It's pretty much standard in about the same in every 241 I've ever pulled apart. So see, here's my old output shaft out of my crawl box. So basically I just have to, from about here back, turn that down, then it'll get resplined to 32 spline to fit into that input. Yeah, it'd be relatively easy to do. These things, they're pretty hard on the outside, but once you get through that, it's pretty easy to turn. So I'm going to go chuck this thing in the lathe and get started on that. the shaft looks like now with all the turning done. So I've got turned to diameter for the splines, put a little radius up here in this corner to kind of eliminate any stress risers there. I also kind of turned this back so I've got a relief for the splining cutter to go into and then chamfered the end. So that should be all nice once I go ahead and cut this off right here. But for now, I'm going to take this whole thing and we'll go get set up on the mill and the dividing head with the splining cutter and start working on carving the splines into this part right here. So here's my setup in the mill. Got it in the dividing head, running over to the tailstock. Went ahead and indicated everything in already, so I think within half a thousandth in both directions here. So that should be good to go. So now I just got to get my cutter set up. So for that, I've got this little cutter that I made a while back. If it'll focus on that. But anyway, it's just a little single insert cutter. Use a little triangular so you get the 30-degree pressure angle for these splines. So set that up. Basically, I'll touch that off on top and then move down half the diameter of the shaft plus half the diameter of the cutter, or the insert anyway. So that should put me centered up on the shaft that way, and then I can basically come in, make my cuts, be wind up on the back side where I'm doing the cut. So I'll get that set up and we can start getting some splines cut. Okay, I've got all my machine work done on my output shaft. It's pretty much ready to go. I did wind up turn this little nub on the end so that when it goes into the transfer case, there's actually a little pocket inside this input that will kind of slide into. I'm kind of thinking maybe that'll help hold this thing a little bit more rigidly in place. Probably not necessary, but whatever, that's what I did. So you see this thing fits in here just like it's supposed to, makes everything work like it's supposed to. So next step in this is going to be heat treat. So this, like most of the transmission transfer case output shafts and gears that I've seen, is made out of 8620 steel. The issue with that is the 20 in that name means it's got 20 points of carbon, or 0.20%. So in order for steel to be really heat treatable, you need at least 30 points of carbon, or 0.30%. So in order to get this up to that, we're going to do a carburizing on it, and specifically pack carburizing. So that means we're going to take this, build a little box that it will sit in, and then there's a compound that goes in there that's basically, it's charcoal powder and some other ingredients that go into it, that it'll get sealed up in that box, and then it goes into the furnace, and as it gets heated up, the carbon from the charcoal will go into the surface of the steel, and it penetrates down 40-50 thousandths, give or take, and then pull it out of that, and then you go in, do your final heat treating on it, heat it, quench it, and then this outer surface, like I said, about 40 or 50 thousandths deep, will be good and hard, just like what we've got on the stock part of the shaft here, and then it'll be ready to go. That hardening will keep the splines from mushrooming over and getting worn down. That's really what the heat treating is mostly doing. You're not providing a whole lot of strength. Like I said, it's a shallow heat treat, but you are basically, it's a case hardening on this outer part of the shaft that keeps it from wearing. So we're gonna get started making the box for this thing and get into that process. So here's my box I'm going to use for the carburizing process. So the shaft will go in here and it gets filled up around it with this stuff, which is a pack hardening compound. It's basically, like I said, powdered charcoal with some, I think it's a sodium bicarbonate and some other ingredients in there to make it work better. I know you can make your own of this stuff, but it was just as easy to buy one that I know will work. So I'm going to start getting this thing filled up, and then we can start heading towards the oven with it. And this stuff is about a mess to work with too. We got black stuff everywhere. Right, that should about do it. I can see if I can get my lid in there. A little excess. Alright, I think that's going to work. Alright, now that I got the shaft in here and all packed in place, I'm going to mix up some of this refractory. That'll go around, seal up all the edges around the lid here so no more air gets in there. And that should keep everything nice and sealed up. So I'll mix this stuff up and get it applied on there. Okay, so here's the box all sealed up. Got that refractory all the way around. Make sure we don't get any air in there and have that charcoal catch on fire. That would probably not be good to burn my furnace down. But it's getting a little late in the day right now, so I think I'm going to wait, and first thing in the morning I'll get the oven fired up and get this thing in it. Okay, so we got the furnace all going. See, it's sitting at about 1700 degrees, which, open that up. See, you got that thing in there cooking away. So it's going to be doing that for the next several hours. So once this thing runs through its cycle, I should be able to come out here later tonight, shut the oven off, then I'll let the whole thing cool down overnight, and then tomorrow morning I should be able to finish up the heat treat cycle on this thing, do the actual heat and quench and temper and all that. So till then, I think I'm going to call it a night. So it's the next morning. This thing's been cooling down overnight. You still see, even with no heat on it, still got 91 degrees in there. This thing is really insulated. So we'll go ahead and pop this thing out of here and see what we got. I put this thing in a little container. Hopefully that'll keep from making a mess all over the bench, because I'm pretty sure this is going to get really messy when I start pulling that thing out of that charcoal in there. So first thing I do is chip away all of this stuff and then see if I can pop this thing open. Oh yeah, that's making a mess anyway. Yeah. There's still a little bit of heat going on in there too. So, all right, let me get this cleaned up and see what we got. So here's the shaft all cleaned up, ready for the next step in heat treatment. I did have to go clean out all of the hardening compound I dumped out, and plus what was in the box. There's actually still enough heat left in that it was trying to burn once it hit the air and releasing all kinds of ammonia and who knows what else. So it's definitely something to do in a well-ventilated area. So the oven's back up to temperature. So this first round is going to be 1550 degrees. So I'll go ahead and get it stuck in there and let it soak for a while. Okay, time to pull this thing out and give it a quench. Okay, for this next step, we're going to 1350 degrees. So that last one basically kind of what they call refines the core. This next step is supposed to make it so that the outer case gets to the hardness that it's supposed to be at. So go ahead and get this thing thrown in there. Oop. Okay, now we'll let her cook. All right, time to make some flames again. No Alright, so I got through final heat treat on this, just did a temper on it to about 300 degrees. So this thing is good to go now. See, you hit it with a file and it just skates right off. So it's got a good hard shell on there. So now I can start to get everything assembled back onto the transfer case and start working through that process. Step one, my adapter from the crawl box to the transfer case. I've also got holes in it. It kind of serves as the rear mount at the case. Could also be a boat anchor if we really need to, because apparently I was not thinking lightweight when I built this thing originally. So start with, we'll get some silicone on here and get this thing bolted up. Also got a little silicone on the bolts just so that they'll seal up as they go in there too. So with this adapter bolted on, now I can stick this shaft in here, and then I've got the shift fork and collar assembly. That's going to go on like so. And again, boat anchor parts. This is the main housing for the planetary set. So we'll squirt a little silicone on there too and get it installed. Okay, so now I can install my transmission adapter onto the planetary set. So that will just slide onto the bearing like so. And just a little snap ring holds that in there. Alright, there we go. And then I have this seal housing will go in there and retain all of that. So now with this all put together, I can install this whole thing into here. Hopefully that everything lines up without too much difficulty. Yeah, okay. I should probably put some silicone on that first. Okay, trying again, this time with the silicone on it. Alright, there we go. Get that bolted down. Alright, so now with this all put together, I can kind of give it a little try out here. It should be in high range. Looks to be, move this one back, and now I've got low range, high range, so it's all working like it's supposed to. So now I can get this shifter housing installed on it. So that's about it. This thing's all put together, ready to go. I think before I put it in though, I want to know how much this weighs. I've been guessing forever. I think it's probably somewhere in the 220 pound range, but I think I'm gonna get the scale out and see what it really is. I know it sure feels heavy trying to move it around, so I'm gonna find out for sure what it's actually weighing. So I got this thing hanging up in the air, so I was actually kind of close on what my original estimate was. So I always thought around 220 and we're 231. So still a heavy thing. All right, we got everything stuffed in here. I had to do a little bit of adjustment on my shifter linkage to get that to all line up. Still not perfect, but it's close enough for what it is. So everything's kind of working like it's supposed to now. So now I just need to get my transmission tunnel in, and then I can pull this thing out and give it a little test. Well, here we go for a little test drive. Out taking the rig for a walk. So far everything seems to be working out pretty well, and it has definitely got some crawl to it. So can't wait to get this thing up in the rocks and the snow now that we actually have some coming. Hopefully we'll get some good shots of this thing working when we get a chance to get up there. Eventually it's going to make it past me.